So here we are at the headquarters. I believe this is the new headquarters of Google, and the older headquarters are just on the other side here. We're going to have a look at them as well. You should be aware that Andrew Bridgen was interviewed. He's a British MP, for those who don't know, who has turned sceptical about the vaccination program, about the COVID story, and about how the measures that were taken internationally took place simultaneously in many countries of the Western world. There was a certain pattern in key countries of the Western world. So I wanted to try and address a little bit about that. And you see, this is the new Google HQ. You see the cranes above us. It's about, well, probably in square footage, it's bigger than the British Parliament in terms of their ability to use the space, and in terms of the exercise of control they have over society in Britain. It must be as large as the British Parliament and the British government. After all, I'm talking to you through it now. The British government isn't talking to you. And if the British government wants to know what you've done, they make a request through various institutions, to legal frameworks, and the rest of it, to companies like Google. This particular area around King's Cross, where the Google headquarters are, is an area where they're using, or they piloted, the introduction of facial recognition software. So probably as I walk down here, the facial recognition machines are running, as they are for every other person who's walking down here. So this is the utopia, dystopia, the centre of it. You may have seen in the news today, one of the leading figures in the development of artificial intelligence had resigned from Google because he doesn't trust them with control over artificial intelligence, over the war about ChatGPT, which is not a little battle about who controls a couple of little tags entered into a machine, but about the future of humanity itself, and the war between different nation states and giant corporations which dominate those nation states, about the trajectory and development of the fate of humanity. Now, just over here on the left-hand side is the existing headquarters. Now, I'm assuming this is the Google headquarters. There's another block over there, so we might look over there a little bit later on. I'll just wander around the area here. But here we are at the Google HQ as is. You can see they've got a few floors with some jazzy, look, they've got a Ukrainian flag up there on the first floor there, or second floor there. They got their sort of modernist style of the building. I went inside there once a year or two ago and protested against them imposing bans on the YouTube channel, but they were kind enough to ignore them. But I went inside there. Look, they got a little gym for them in there. Look, there's on a gym. But it's a bit peculiar that they keep expanding their offices, despite the fact that since the pandemic, working from home became a trend. So they're increasing their office space at a time when other companies are not. And of course, they probably want to keep control of their staff, keep them under surveillance in case the type of thing happened today, where one of their senior execs involved in forging their artificial intelligence policies as designed. Oh look, they've got a lovely thing up there. Look, this is that sign up there. Ever so meaningful for their message to the world. And it says, not for self, but for all. So that's the message from YouTube, Google. Or is that Camden Council? No, it's not. I don't think so. Maybe it's Camden Council. It might be wrong. In any case, they're right next to each other. They're probably hand in glove, or better said, one is subordinate to the other, and we know which one's the dominant. This one here. Now, Dr. John Campbell's channel was struck this week, and he's been absolutely scrupulous in trying to abide by the regulations that were imposed by YouTube, Google, YouTube. Actually, they just merged the two things here. It used to be on the right-hand side over here, over on that side, used to be YouTube, and on this side was Google, but now it's just one and the same thing. And look, they got little geeky little cats and things like that. That sort of childishness that they like to present as their image, whereas actually you're dealing with a much more sinister organisation than that. We're dealing literally with the fate of democracy throughout the world. Now, I don't want to, of course, spread any medical misinformation or anything that might threaten broadcasting here. So I just wanted to give you an idea of, go over there. You know, it is quite astounding to look at their regulations on what is allowed and what's not allowed. So let's just have a quick look at that again, so you can get an idea of how insane this block on Dr. John Campbell is. So that's the Google headquarters over there, yeah. Now, the messages from Google, so there's enough light here. Let's go over there. They've got light over there. So, what you're not allowed to do, you see, in relation to COVID medical misinformation, it says here, content that contradicts the WHO or local authority guidance on the treatment, prevention, diagnosis, transmission, and the existence of COVID-19. So you're not allowed to question anything that contradicts the WHO. Now, what is the WHO? The WHO is mainly funded, incorrect. The WHO's largest funder is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in conjunction with CEPI and Gavi. Officially, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is the second largest donor after the Federal Republic of Germany. And of course, the Federal Republic of Germany is a state that has a great deal of influence from the pharmaceutical industry, sort of interpenetrating the state officialdom in its association with the WHO. Now, I want to read to you a little bit from a research article, a journalistic piece of research carried out by Politico and Die Welt. So it's extremely mainstream. The main line that they take is that the reason why the Gates and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation controlled the pandemic response, and they say that globally they controlled the pandemic response, is because they had prior preparation in advance of the events of 2019-20. So I will cite you what that intervention is, as found by the investigative journalistic article by Politico and Die Welt. I'll probably have to cite you the reference as well, but although this is not illegal as far as their rules are concerned, but it says the following. Let's see. Right, first of all, I want to cite you from Dominic Cummings, who presented evidence to the parliamentary, you can probably see here the reference point here, the Parliament, shall put in the light a bit, the Parliamentary Inquiry Committee there, you should be able to see it there, just about oral evidence by Dominic Cummings. And he said that for Bill Gates type networks, that is shaped policy, Gavi, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, and which are both spin-offs of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the fourth major player is the Wellcome Trust. These four organizations invested $10 billion in the preparation for the intervention. Sorry, this wasn't the Dominic Cummings, this is the Politico article, but I'm running the background to it. And then the Politico article says, the WHO was crucial to the group's rise to power. All had long-standing ties to the global health body. The boards of CEPI and Gavi have a specially designated WHO representative. There's also a revolving door between the employment in the groups and work for the WHO. Former WHO employees now work at the Gates Foundation and CEPI. Some, such as Chris Wolfe, the Deputy Director of Country Partnerships at the Gates Foundation, occupy important positions. Much of the group's clout with the WHO stems simply from money. Since the start of the pandemic in 2020, the Gates Foundation, Gavi and the Wellcome Trust have donated collectively more than $1.4 billion to the WHO, a significantly greater amount than most other official member states, including the United States and the European Commission, according to data provided by the WHO. You have to remember, quote this is, you have to remember that when you're dealing with the Gates Foundation, it's almost like you're dealing with another major country in terms of their donations to these global health organizations, a former US senior health official said. Leaders of the Gates Foundation, CEPI, Gavi and the Wellcome Trust deployed their lobbying and advocacy networks and used their political connections to push US and European officials to commit billions of dollars to COVID programs the organizations helped to envisage and to lead. So just to make it clear, this is the Politico article, not the statements from Cummings. I'll come back to them afterwards. The extent of their access to global decision makers attests to their central role in helping to establish the global COVID response. These groups briefed top officials in the European Commission about investments in tests, treatments and shots, and the importance of sharing those products with the rest of the world. How philanthropic of them, eh? In the UK, the organisations usually met several times a month with ministers to discuss topics such as COVID testing, clinical trials and manufacturing capacity. Some of those meetings included the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, Bill Gates and Melinda French Gates, his former wife, who spoke directly to the then German Chancellor Angela Merkel about the distribution of COVID vaccines according to German government documents. So now Bill Gates has formed something called, so that was the end of that quotation from that article, and now Bill Gates has published a book called How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. In this book, Gates recommends that the international community create a global epidemic response and mobilization team, acronym GERM, with a permanent 3,000-person organization made up of experts in epidemiology, data science, logistics, communications, and other disciplines. In other words, they'll have a permanent mechanism which will be able to pressure every single government in the world, starting with the leading capitalist states in the world, to adopt policies that they push. In other words, whenever they declare pandemics, threats, dangers, they will have to be taken notice of because they have the control over the institutional framework which takes action on these issues, which of course is all tied in with the global pandemic treaty that they're signing off, they imagine, over the next month or so. Now, yeah, let me just find the exact quotation from Dominic Cummings. Here it is. Sorry, I missed that. I went to the end of it instead of the start of it. So the exact quotation from Dominic Cummings is as follows. From the House of Commons Health and Social Care Committee and Science Technology Committee on the 26th of May 2021. So he made these comments to that committee under interrogation. I think it was mainly by Jeremy Hunt, actually, but there were several others there as well. This is a direct quote from Dominic Cummings. The conventional wisdom was that we are not going to be able to have any vaccines in 2020. In March 2020, that is, I started getting calls from various people, quote, these new mRNA vaccines could well smash the conventional wisdom and don't necessarily stick to it, unquote. People like Bill Gates and that kind of network were saying that. Essentially what happened is that there was a network of Bill Gates type people who were saying, quote, completely rethink the whole paradigm of how you do this. build in parallel. Here's the science thing. Here's the manufacturing thing. Here's the distribution. Here's the supply. Here's the logistics. Here's the data. The normal thing that you do is you do those sequentially. Bill Gates and people like that said to me, and to others at number 10, what they said was, quote, you need to think of this much more like some kind of classic program of the past. The Manhattan Project in World War II, the Apollo program, and build it all in parallel. In normal government accounting terms, this is completely crazy. Because if nothing works out, you have literally spent billions building all these things up, and the end result is nothing. You get zero for it. It's all waste. This is still Dominic Cummings, yeah? What Bill Gates and people and Patrick Vallance and his team were saying was that the actual expected return on this is so high that even if it does turn out to be all wasted, it's still a good gamble in the end. All the conventional White House accountancy systems for that cannot basically cope with it, and you have to throw it all down the toilet. That's essentially what we did. That is Dominic Cummings, reporting from inside number 10. He was the leading figure in the government in Britain. He had contact with the other European governments, although not as much, of course, as Bill and Melinda Gates and, of course, the tech giants. Now, all the tech giants, of course, battled it out for control over the information supply. You know, I think sometimes we make a mistake. Those people who protested and demonstrated, they're focusing on the government. The government's going to do this, the government's going to do that, the government's going to pass a law on all these things, which are all significant factors. But you have to understand that in the background, you have this technological drive by the giant corporations pushing their lobby power. And their lobbying power is an ongoing process. You know, there's more people in here processing, using data. You know, they've got this machinery to survey the world. We're talking through their own instruments. They're surveying what we're saying. They know who's watching this at the moment. They know where everybody is in the country. They know where everybody is in pretty much most of the world. They can monitor you from outer space. They've got Google 3D, Google World, which can monitor in 3 dimensions from outer space. They can sell that information at a much higher resolution, a much higher control to the powers that be. They can monitor where people are at any time. They can monitor the proximity, the exchanges, the communication, the trade, the business, the bank accounting. All of these things are already subject to generalized surveillance by Google and its superior entity, Alphabet. And Bill Gates is in a game, of course, with these companies, but they're all maliciously intending to serve their own interests, which are connected with, you know, they're even saying, connected with the danger that their own machines begin to take control and command without even having human decision making over what is happening. So, for example, when this channel got a strike a couple of weeks ago, this was an algorithm. A machine decided to strike it, and the decisions that are being made at the top level about control over vaccines, safety, medicines, policy, internationally and nationally, and in banks and major corporations, they are increasingly made by machines, with fewer and fewer multi-billionaires controlling the direction and trajectory in which these machines are used. And then they are also becoming integrated with this technological machinery. In other words, the data machinery is becoming integrated with weaponry, the drones that they're using in the war in Ukraine. They're being integrated with these Boston robotic type machines that will be used to police the people in future, and the police will begin to lose their jobs. There'll be some security guards instead, and then lesser beings maybe later on, cleaners perhaps, or something like that, although a lot of the cleaners are being got rid of as well. I saw in King's Cross the other day they replaced cleaners with a robot as well. So here we have these guys who don't themselves, again, they don't even know what they're doing and why they're doing it. They're doing bits of jobs. This little job here, that little job there, that little job there, getting paid good money, £100,000, £200,000, £300,000 a year for their little data control skills. But none of them have any control over what happens with the general direction and trajectory of their company. And what we've seen with the John Campbell story is that someone who has scrupulously attempted, and wrongly in my opinion, attempted his assessments, in my opinion, at the very beginning of the pandemic and up until relatively recently were completely wrong. But nevertheless, he honestly attempted to monitor what was happening and assess what was happening within the parameters of his own way of thinking and his trust within the establishment. And he discovered over time that the entire thing was a lie. Now, sometimes some of those people draw extraordinarily conspiratorial conclusions because they feel so betrayed, you see, and they feel that their trust has been utterly and thoroughly betrayed. And sometimes they draw a mistaken conclusion. It's my opinion that Mike Yeadon has done a little bit of that, and that Sukhari Bhakti has done that. But okay, that's my opinion. They're welcome to their views. But of course, they are also already censored. One of my criticisms of John Campbell is that he never talks about those people who were censored before him. But nevertheless, some people have said to me, "Oh yeah, John Campbell's a shill. He's just speaking out now, and it's the great reveal and all this sort of thing." And Andrew Bridgen took the vaccine and promoted the vaccine. True, but when people move towards the truth, you must, in my opinion, accept that and try to collaborate with them and work with them. Each step forward is a step forward for all of us, and people learn incrementally in different stages. And so I think it's important to take note of that, collaborate with them, work with them, and build the broadest possible base of support to smash the power of these entities that have seized control of the world, and that will continue to expand their control over the world without the individuals, these people coming out of here, even realizing what's happening. So tomorrow, as I understand it, Andrew Bridgen is coming down here in the morning at 10 o'clock, and I'd suggest you probably to lodge a complaint, and I'd recommend that any of you who agree with his current assessment of what has happened should come down at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. It's here just above King's Cross. So that's the basic message I wanted to get across today. Give you an idea about the physicality of it as well, not just the data. This is this is the British network that spreads across the entire planet and interconnects everybody on Earth, or nearly everybody on Earth, with totalitarian desires and controls. The cancelling of people, the negation of them, the dissolution of them. It's no different from. I say it's no different. When in Stalin's Russia, they deleted someone, they removed the photograph of them. They became, like George Orwell says, an unperson. But now they smear you, denigrate you, denounce you. They accuse you of being an anti-Semite. And they can block you completely. Google has the power to delete you completely from the face of the internet. I mean, in the normal sense of the word. In other words, if I'm using this phone, for example, it requires Google Play to operate for the apps to work. And if Google want to, they can delete all of that. And you've got Google Pay and all the rest of it. So, and of course, this is just one company. There's several companies all battling it out for command of the world. But these are their sort of networked epicenters that are more powerful than governments, and that really are pulling this game. It's them. These entities are behind the game. The governments are in the pay of these entities. They are not independent of them. And then they offer them, look, this guy, Nick Clegg, remember what a non-entity that twat is? And yet he was moved from, an insignificant creature within the British government, a Liberal Democrat, taken into the British government under Cameron, and then suddenly he was like, Mr. Facebook, the face of Facebook. So it's a revolving door amongst all these people and these entities, and how we challenge and break these entities is the decisive question, as far as I can see. It's their control that's responsible for what's happened in the last few years. Precisely the people who claim to be preventing misinformation are the main instruments of misinformation. Okay, that's enough for now. Maybe tomorrow.